guys, welcome back to season 2 of Tell Me Darling. We're back on our first episode, which is super exciting. I feel like it's been a really big gap between the first season and the second season, but we're finally here. Kids are back at school, which means I have time to actually research stuff and we have time to film it uninterrupted. Everyone say hi to Phil. Hi Phil. Phil, say hi to everyone.
What's up? We back, baby.
Oh my god.
What it do, baby?
Oh my god. My mic keeps
New season, new me.
What?
How long were we meant to have off?
Like 4 weeks.
Oh.
Yeah, but life happens. We just like...
Your mic's going to fall. Have you not screwed it in properly?
No, you just keep talking while I fix it.
Yeah, so we're back. Season 2. Episode... Oh, what the... Babe, no, unscrew the thing and make sure it's... I'm not yelling. You're just going to break the equipment.
Oh my god. Okay. Carry on. Fuck this podcast making us work today. Nothing's going right. Anyway, a bit of a gap. It just worked out like that. But we're here and that's all that matters. So, yeah, we hope everyone had a great Christmas and a great New Year's and you're all...
Great January.
Great January. Shit, it has been a long time.
No, we finish up in December.
October, Dal.
No, we didn't.
Yeah, start of October. I was like, I'll be back on Halloween. And then we just didn't.
No way.
Yeah. It just got really hectic at the end of last year. November was a bit crazy. We had so many birthdays. And then
we finished our last one in December.
No, October.
Oh, wow. It has been a while.
The start of October.
Oh, so they've probably missed us so much.
So much. But yeah, we were just super busy. And the kids were home all school holidays. I spent like 55 days with them, which was a long time, but it meant that I couldn't really listen or watch true crime stuff. And I also became a little bit of a bitch by the end of last year. Like I was scared to be home alone and I kept locking all the doors on people. People would like go out and...
You mean like you became a little bitch?
Yeah, a little bitch.
I thought you meant you becoming a bitch.
No, I'm always a bitch. That's not new. But I became scared. I was like, no, I need to have a break. And I was also a mess after our last episode. That one fucked me up. I still think about it and like fucks me up. Anyway, so I needed a break, a little mental health break.
But yeah, we had a great break.
Way to cut me off.
Yeah, you're carrying on. We had a great break, a great Christmas, great New Year's, real quiet, good quality family time. But we're back and we're ready to get into it. So take us away.
It's Tuesday, the 27th of July, 1976, and we are in the state of Oregon in the USA.
Yeah, Portland, Oregon.
Sure, yep.
I'm correct.
Okay.
1976.
I forgot. Phil went there one time, so he knows everything about the US now.
Everything. And I'll bet the best ice cream as well.
Okay, let's go. 76. It's summer, the weather is warm, and people are enjoying their summer holidays. James O'Leary, however, was not one of those people. He was an Oregon City attorney, and he was in his office as per usual when in walked a man and a woman. The pair looked disheveled and distraught and asked to speak to James. When James asked what he could do for them, they expressed to him that they had been away for the weekend and something bad had happened, and they needed to speak with the police, but they thought it would be best to seek some legal advice first. The pair explained to James what had happened, and he was shocked at what he had heard. He then escorted them to the county sheriff's office where they could retell their story to the sheriffs on duty. The pair explained that they had been away for the weekend on a fishing and hunting trip with a third person, and there had been an accident while they were deer hunting, and that person was now dead. So we're going to go back to 4 days earlier.
Okay, 4 days before that fine Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
So this couple, where'd they walk into?
They walked into an attorney's office.
A random place to walk into. Hey, there's an attorney's office. Let's walk in there. Like, did they plan to go in there?
I literally said that. There had been an accident. They wanted to speak to the police, but they knew that they thought that it would be better to seek legal advice first.
Oh, I see. Something sus is going on then. If they want to see a lawyer before they're going straight to the police.
Well, wouldn't you?
No, like if something had happened, if it was an emergency, popo.
It wasn't an emergency. There was an accident.
Okay. All right.
Even if you're innocent, people always get a lawyer because you never know how people will spin stuff. regardless. Anyway, so we're going back 4 days earlier.
Yep.
So back to the 22nd of July. It is a Friday, and Julio and Candra Torres are a young couple living in Oregon who are packing up to go away for the weekend. The pair are celebrating their 1-year wedding anniversary, which is coming up, and had decided that a quiet, secluded fishing trip into the mountains would be the perfect way to spend it. Julio is 21 and Candra is 16 years old, which means that they were 20 and 15 at the time of their wedding.
Whoa.
The two of them were in love
That's
and
a
happy.
crime.
And although there was a questionable age gap, Candra's father liked Julio. He actually thought that Julio was good for Candra, but he was a religious man. They were all religious. And he told Candra that if they were going to be together, then they needed to get married. So they did.
What the fuck? So weird. What nationality are they?
American.
Like Candra. What? That's
Candra.
Candra.
Yeah.
Okay.
White American. Yeah. So it's their anniversary weekend. They are still in that love bubble phase and they have no kids and the freedom to do whatever they want, but they don't have a lot of money. So they are doing this anniversary on a budget. They don't have tents or a camper, but they just plan to sleep in their car for the duration of the trip and just to work with what they have. Julio liked to fish and he wanted to share his love for fishing with his new wife, and Candra was excited to learn. The night before they were meant to leave, Candra was awoken by a nightmare. While she couldn't remember exactly what it was about, she knew it had something to do with their upcoming trip, and it left her feeling uneasy. The next morning, when speaking to a friend, Candra relayed this feeling and shared that she had a bad dream the night before and was feeling a bit funny about this trip. So her friend suggested that maybe Candra should take her Bible with her to comfort her and give her spiritual protection while she was away. So Candra did. She popped it in.
That always works. Sorry. Yeah, I got my Bible. I'm safe.
I think it's like a comfort thing,
Yeah.
So she popped it in her backpack along with her other things ready for her weekend away with Julia. So they drive over to this friend's place to see if they would like to come, but when they knocked on the door, no one was home. They leave a note on the door that reads, "We came by to see if you would like to come to the mountains with us. Sorry you missed the fun." Then hopped in their truck along with their pet dog Rusty and headed to Mount Hood National Forest.
Oh, what a cute dog name, Rusty.
Mm-hmm. The weather was warm and the sky was blue, and the couple relaxed into their weekend away as they drove up the long roads through the mountains. As the day went on, Julio and Candra found themselves down a road that they didn't recognize, and it felt creepy and just gave bad vibes. So they double checked the map, and that's when they realized that they had missed their turn a while ago and had to turn around and head back. So they turn around and head back, and finally they reached the camping ground, but it was late, so they settled in for the night in their car and went to sleep. So it's the next morning and Candra is cooking breakfast while Julio is finally fishing, and the two are having a great time.
What's she making for breakfast?
I don't know, probably something out of a can. They don't have much money.
Oh, so they have like a little stove, little camper stove tops.
I think they have like a little pot over a fire, but I don't know exactly what they make for breakfast.
I gotta know details.
Okay, sorry. Next time I'll ask.
Yeah.
But time passes and Julio is not having much luck.
Julio. Sorry. Is that how you pronounce his name?
Julio.
Julio.
No, it's Julio.
Okay.
I triple double checked this because I've heard different people say different things, but it's definitely Julio.
Yeah.
Straight from, He's yet to catch a fish and he's feeling a bit frustrated. So they pack up their rods and their stuff and drive a little further down. They try another spot, but no luck. So they try another spot and then another spot, and they even stop and ask some fishermen they see along the way if they're having any bites, but no one is having a good fish day. And this fishing weekend is just not working out in Julia's favor. By this time, it's starting to get late, the sun is starting to set, and they've already used half a tank of fuel. So Candra suggests that maybe it's time to head back.
So they've been fishing all day, different spots, and not catching anything.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Would
you have left me if I hadn't caught anything yet?
No, but you don't like to fish, so that is a fear that I will never have to face.
What? Not
fishing.
Yeah, fuck that.
Okay.
Couldn't think of anything worse.
Oh, but some people love it. But just as they reach the Norfolk Dam, Julio spots another man by the water and decides to approach him. Maybe he knew something about the area or had some tips for Julio. Julio approaches the man and introduces himself. He begins to tell him about his struggle with the fish that day, and the man, who appears to be in his late 20s, doesn't really give Julio the time of day. He almost seems bothered by Julio's presence. He replies with short answers and barely makes eye contact.
Man, I'll be the same. If someone just come up to me and tell me, man, I ain't caught no fish today, I'll be like, get the fuck out of here, bro. I don't give a fuck about no fish.
That's not true. You're lying.
No, I wouldn't.
You're literally lying.
But I wouldn't say get the fuck out of here. I'd be thinking, like, get the fuck out of here. But I'll be like, cool story, bro.
You love to talk to people though. If someone,
Yeah, not about fishing.
But if you were playing basketball and someone come up and was like, "Hey man, damn, haven't found any cool basketball hoops," you'd be like, "Yeah man, come play with me." You play with little kids at the park.
That sounds... I don't play with little kids at parks. That's pedophile behaviour.
Basketball. That's what I'm saying. Look, if you had a common interest, you would.
Right.
Okay? Anyway, unless you're a creep. So this man doesn't want to talk to Julio. He's not really interested. He's like Phil, can't be fucked. But then he notices Candra, and suddenly the man lights up and he looks
Hello,
at Candra.
Miss Lady. Was it like that?
She's 16, remember?
Was she attractive?
Yeah, she was.
Mm-hmm.
She does look a little bit older for her age.
Mm-hmm.
Not that that matters, but
Yeah.
she does look a little bit older, and she is attractive. He starts talking with the pair, and he tells Julia that he hasn't had much luck that day either, but he knows of a spot where a whole heap of fish had just been offloaded into the water, and that he could show them where that spot is. So the man introduces himself as Tom. He said he was a logger who worked around the area. He told Julia and Candra that the spot he had in mind was only a few miles up the road, and he suggested that they follow him in their car while he drove his car, which was a red GMC pickup truck. But the pair weren't sure. They didn't have much fuel, and they weren't sure that they would make it to the next stop and then back to a fuel station.
Mm-hmm.
So Tom tells them, like, don't worry if you run out of fuel, I can drive into town and just, like, bring you back some more fuel in the morning, like, if you get stuck. And Candra didn't really feel comfortable with this idea. She didn't get a good feeling from Tom, and she didn't like the way he looked at her. But despite her feelings, she kept them to herself, and Julia hopped in their car ready to follow Tom to his new fishing spot with Candra.
Mm-hmm.
So they follow Tom down a long, narrow path, driving further and further away from where their trip had originally begun, deeper and deeper into the woods. Tom eventually pulls over, and the couple pulls in behind him. Tom gets out of his truck and he comes to Julio's window, and he suggests that maybe it would be a good idea if they got into his truck so that they didn't run out of fuel and he could just drop them back off in the morning.
Great idea. Probably the best idea I've ever heard.
Mm-hmm. I would be like, we gotta go.
Yeah, well.
We gotta go.
Yeah, I'll be sus straight away if I was trying to talk to someone and they weren't giving me time of day. Then they seen you and then we're all happy chappy. That's when I'll be like, yeah, let's go.
Okay. Candra was immediately like against the idea. She's like, no, absolutely not. Like, I don't want to leave all my stuff. I don't really know you. I don't want to leave the car. Like, we've got Rusty, the dog. Julia asked Tom like how much further the drive was, and he explains that it's like just beyond Bagby's Hot Springs, which is like just so happens to be like down that road that they started to drive down the day before when they made a wrong turn and they got like bad vibes.
The bad vibes turn.
But it wasn't much further, so they agreed to continue on, but in their own car.
First mistake.
Do you know what's funny? You say that because you're like, no, absolutely not. I wouldn't do it. But you have to remember, Tom's 20.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay, she's 16. Do you remember when we went to Thailand and our first day in Bangkok, we were walking around and some guy was like, hey, come check out this shop, a really cool shop. And we were like, okay. And then we turned down the street and we're both like looking at each other. We're both like, I could tell you didn't want to go.
No.
I didn't want to go. But we didn't say anything. We just kept following this man.
You know why?
No.
Because I felt in control 100%. And I knew where we were going. And I knew on the other side we'd see that Bentley parked at the front, the jewelry shop, the souvenir shop. That's the only shop we could afford. But I knew we were safe.
Okay, but you didn't because it was our first time there. But what I'm saying is we still willingly went, even though we were both uncomfortable. You were uncomfortable. And we were like,
fine.
we weren't. Don't lie. We were literally saying, whispering, we should turn back. We should turn back. Like, why are we following this stranger down this like freaking narrow path? And like, but you just don't want to think like the worst is going to happen. You just assume that would like won't happen to you, which is what like I feel that way when I'm reading this. Like everyone is listening going, oh, as if you fucking would, like you wouldn't go, but you just assume that not everyone is a bad person. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Okay. This guy fucking talks shit. He was just as scared as I was.
No way.
Yes. Anyway.
Like, babe, I want to take you to the magical place. We're gonna follow my little friend here and we're gonna go to the magical place.
Shut up. We literally fucking didn't leave our hotel room after that because we were so scared. Okay, so Tom follows them. So they
we had fun in our hotel room.
Oh, shut up. Okay, they continue to follow Tom down the road, which soon turned into a dirt road into the thick of the woods, eventually coming to a stop. It had taken them a while to get to their new spot, and the sun had now set, and it was too dark to fish, so they decided to set up camp for the night and agree that it would be better to fish in the morning. So they set up camp, they're just chilling around the fire, and Tom says, hold on, I want to show you something. And he goes to his truck and he comes back and he's holding a dead bird. And Candra's like, yuck, like why do you have that? Tom tells them that he killed it earlier that day, and Candra says to him, well, we don't really believe in killing animals just for the sake of it, you know, like they should only be killed for food. And Tom says to her, oh, I plan to eat it, don't worry. After dinner, Tom went to his car again, but this time he comes back with a rifle. He sits down by the fire and aims it at nearby animals, acting as if he's going to shoot them, but he never does. Eventually, they decide it's time for bed. Julio and Candra hop into their car where they'd been sleeping the night before and lock the doors. Candra tells Julio that she doesn't like Tom. She feels uncomfortable around him, but Julio reassures her that everything is fine. Some people are just different.
Tom's a mad dude. Is that what Julio's saying?
It's Julio.
It's Julio.
I think he's just, again, just trying to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Candra did not sleep well that night, and the next morning was startled awake when Tom banged on the hood of their car to wake them up. He tells them that it was time to go fishing, and they walk down to the water. Tom kind of hung back during this time, and Julio casted a line, but like the day before, there was no bites. Suddenly, shots rung through the air, and they turned to face Tom, and he had his rifle pointed up to the sky and is shooting at a flock of birds. Not only did this make Candra feel uncomfortable, because once again it felt like Tom was just killing animals for the sake of it, but it also made Julio feel uncomfortable. It was the first real sense that maybe Tom wasn't this like kind of quirky but harmless guy. He thought he was, he just started to get like a weird feeling, and he even tells Candra like to button up her top because she had it slightly unbuttoned and like her bikini was showing. So he was like button it up. So after no luck with fishing again, Tom suggests to Julio that they go hunting. Maybe they can find a deer or something, seeing as the fish weren't biting. And Julio's like, okay, like, you know, why not? And Candra decides to stay back. She doesn't want to go hunting, and she is going to cook breakfast instead while the boys go off. So as Candra is cooking breakfast with Rusty by her side, listening to the birds and the rustling of the trees, she hears a single shot echo through the air. And instinctively, she goes to run, like it gives her a fright. But then she stops herself and she's like, you know, it's probably nothing, they're hunting. Of course they're going to be shooting something. It's probably just a deer. And then through the trees, Tom appears, but he's alone. Tom calls out to Candra and he tells her, we got us a deer, and then says that Julio was with the deer cleaning the carcass. And Candra was immediately suspicious. Julio wasn't a hunter, he has never killed an animal, and he wouldn't know the first thing about cleaning a carcass. With the sense that something terrible had happened, Candra gets up and runs towards the clearing where Tom had just appeared, when suddenly another gunshot sounded. Candra stops dead in her tracks, and she turns around to see that her childhood dog Rusty was on the ground and covered in blood. Stood just a little further away from Rusty was Tom, holding his smouldering rifle. Candra begins to cry and she says to Tom, you shot my dog. And Tom looks at her with a smile on his face and says, yeah, I know. I shot your husband too.
What? Mm-hmm. What a sicko.
I know. How scary.
So he's just gone out, murdered them both?
First thing in the morning. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, Julio and the dog.
Okay.
So in a split second, Candra's whole world had turned upside down. She'd just seen her dog get shot. She also just found out that her husband was shot and he's most likely dead. And she's now standing face to face with a killer holding a rifle, all alone deep in the woods with nobody else around, and no one even knows where she really is at this point. Like, she's thinking to herself, like, I'm dead. Like, this is how I die.
Yeah.
But Tom doesn't shoot Candra. Instead, he makes her move Rusty's body off of the path and covers it under some foliage. Once Candra had finished covering Rusty, Tom bound her wrists together and walked her towards the clearing where he had just emerged after shooting Julio. Tom told Candra not to look at Julio's body, that it wouldn't do her any good to see her husband dead. He stood her nearby and faced her the other way while he grabbed a watch that Julio had been wearing. While Tom was doing this, Candra begins to cry, and Tom tells her to stop. He says, "You're not allowed to cry. I'm going to tell you a story." He tells her that his name isn't really Tom, it was Kent, and he wasn't a logger. He was a hitman for an organized crime group, and he had murdered 5 to 6 people. And he was wanted across several different states, and now he was on the run from the people he used to work for because he had killed one person too many. The reason he had shot Julio was because he wanted a female companion, and Candra seemed like the type of girl that could handle living off the land with him. He then says to her, "Now you can cry."
What the fuck? It's so random.
It's so random. It's a mouthful.
Obviously, that's not what he does. That wasn't what... He's not actually a hitman. That's just his story.
That's his story. Yeah. At
And
this point,
he just wants a lady friend.
that's what he said. He wanted a companion because he was alone.
Wow.
Basically. Candra wept as she tells Tom, I'm a city girl. I have no idea how to live off the land." And Tom just smiles and even tries to comfort her by hugging her. He then asks her to pack up her belongings into her backpack, ready to set off deeper into the forest. During their walk, Tom instructed Candra to only step on rocks and stones to avoid leaving any footprints behind, don't step in the dirt or the mud or anything. During the 4-hour-long hike, he would throw random items along the way, into random spots of the woods, and Candra believed that Tom was trying to throw off any sense of a trail behind them. After 4 hours of walking, they stop by the river, and Candra hops in the water to cool down. They've been walking for hours, she was hot and exhausted. Meanwhile, Tom lays out a sleeping bag and lays down to watch her. As Candra turns and faces Tom, he asks her to come to him, then to remove her top and to lay down on the sleeping bag with him. Candra cries and pleads with him not to do what she thinks he's about to, but Tom flashes a knife and tells her to lay down. And then you obviously know what happens next. Over the next 2 days, Tom moves Candra around the woods from spot to spot, all the while assaulting her over and over. During this time, he would tell Candra things like, "I could have killed your husband with my bare hands, and I planned to kill him on the first night, but I wanted to be nice and give you guys one last night together." He even said that he could have killed Julio with a knife, but a gun was quick and painless, and that he could have done it in front of her, but he did it away from her so that she didn't see, almost like he was doing her a favor.
What a psycho.
Yeah, he's a fucking freak. As Tom led Candra deeper and deeper into the woods, stopping for breaks, and in between the assaults, Candra would pull out her Bible that her friend had suggested she take with her that weekend and read aloud from it. Tom told Candra that he too had been a Christian once, but he knew that God had given up on him, and Candra says to him that she didn't believe that God doesn't give up on anyone. During their walks, Tom talked a lot. He told Candra how he loved Hitler, that he hated his family. He talked to her about his connections with the mob, and he just sort of rambled on about himself. They also talked together about movies and books and the human mind, but by the 3rd day of their long hike, which is now Monday, the 26th of July, Tom starts to appear and feel sick. He thinks he might have pneumonia and that he actually might die, he's really unwell. He even asked Candra for a pen and paper so that he can write letters to his friends explaining that he might not survive. Now, the idea of him dying probably seems great to most people, but when Candra realizes what this means for her, that she would be stuck and lost alone in these giant woods, she has no idea where she is. Mm-hmm. She starts to cry. She was already scared, but the thought of being alone was terrifying, and to Candra's surprise, so did Tom. He actually starts to cry. He then says to Candra that he had something to tell her. He tells her that he hadn't actually meant to kill Julio, that it was an accident, but he was worried that no one would believe him. After all, he had already served time in prison, and so that's why he decided to take Candra deep into the woods and stay there. Candra asked Tom if he was sure it was an accident, and he tells her over and over that it was. He didn't mean it, and Candra starts to believe him. She started to believe this story, that this was all an accident gone wrong. So she says to Tom, like, if you're sure that that's what really happened, like, let's just go to the police. I'll even tell them, like, that's what I saw. And Tom smiles and he agrees. And
Is this her way of just trying to get him to take her back, or she actually does believe?
She actually does believe. Tom smiles and agrees, and the pair eventually start to make their way back to the campsite where Rusty and Julia's bodies lay. Originally, Tom was going to wait in the woods while Candra headed back to town alone, but the thought of leaving Tom sick and alone in the woods just didn't sit well with Candra, and so she convinced Tom to come back with her. On their trip back down to the town, Tom repeats his story over and over to Candra, and how the rifle had misfired and accidentally killed Julio, and that he only shot Rusty because Rusty tried to attack him, and that it was all self-defense. Over and over he would repeat this story to Candra, and by the time that they'd made it out of the woods and back to town, she truly believed that that is what had happened.
Wow.
So it's now Tuesday, the 27th of July, and Candra and Tom walk into James O'Leary's attorney's office and
okay, so this is
back at the start.
Right.
Yeah,
So
they explain to him that there has been an accident, that Candra's husband Julio had accidentally been shot in a hunting accident, and that they needed legal advice before going to the police. So once at the police station, Tom kind of does all the talking. He tells the police that his name is Thomas Brown, so his name actually was Thomas, not Kent.
Yep.
And he wants to report the accident. When speaking with detectives, Tom tells them that he had met Candra and Julio a few days earlier and took them into the woods to find a better fishing spot and do some hunting. He says to them that Julio and I walked up to the clearing the morning of the 24th. He was using my binoculars and spotted a deer and then handed the binoculars to me so that I could have a look. And then I handed the rifle over to him at the same time. And then after he had looked at the deer and gave the glasses back to Julio, it is while Julio was handing Tom back the rifle that he accidentally grabbed the gun by the trigger and it fired, hitting Julio in the head. He told detectives that Candra had witnessed the whole thing, and that when she came screaming towards him, Rusty, their pet dog, had charged at him, giving Tom no choice but to shoot him. The detective asked Tom to clarify exactly when this had happened, and Tom tells them it was on Saturday. And the detective is like, okay, well, it's now Wednesday, like that was 4 days ago. Tom explains to them that after the shooting, he went into shock. He panicked and he didn't know what to do given his criminal record. He was scared that no one would believe him, so he decided to flee. But when Candra told them that he couldn't just leave her there, Tom told her to come with him, and for the next few days that they just stayed in the woods. But eventually Candra convinced Tom to go to the police, that she would back him up as she had witnessed the whole thing, that it was just an accident, and so he did.
All right.
So the detective asked Candra to relay her version of events, and it matches with what Tom said. She tells them, yes, like everything Tom was saying was true. After multiple interviews with Tom, he was given a polygraph test and he passes. He then accompanies the detectives back to the wooded area where Julio's body still lay and shows them exactly what happened again. The detectives removed Julio's now decomposing body, which was covered in leaves as if it had tried to be concealed, along with Rusty the dog. They also find the rifle that was used in the accident. Satisfied with Candra and Tom's story, the detectives let them go and deemed this all an accident. What was supposed to be a quiet romantic weekend for Candra had now become a haunting nightmare that had left the 16-year-old a widow. Following Julio and Rusty's sudden death, Candra's parents decided it would be a good idea for her to come and stay with them so that they could look after her. Lola, Candra's mum, watched her daughter closely in those first few days. She couldn't shake the feeling that something just wasn't quite right. Candra's voice when describing those last few days didn't sound like her usual self. Lola described it as if it was though Candra's words were just coming out of a stereo being replayed or something, just like really robotic. But maybe this is just how she was processing her grief. Like, how are we to know what the appropriate way is to act when you accidentally lose your husband in a freak accident like that? A few days later, Candra and her parents returned to the apartment that her and Julio had shared, and something changes in Candra. She breaks down and she starts to cry, and she starts to beg her parents, please, Mum and Dad, don't hate me, and she pleads with them and she sobs in front of them. Something inside her brain was telling her that the story she had told police and the story that she'd been telling herself for the past several days was not true. Candra's parents reassured Candra that they didn't hate her and they could never hate her, and to just talk to them, tell them what was upsetting her. She tells them that she doesn't know if Julia's death was an accident or not because she hadn't actually seen it for herself.
Mm-hmm.
And Candra's mum Lola says to her, like, my God, Candra, like, don't you realize that this man murdered your husband? Like, this is what's happened. So 6 days after Candra had originally gone into the county sheriff's office to report the accident with Tom, she returns, only this time accompanied by her parents. She explains to them that she wants to tell them what actually happened, that Julio's death was not an accident and that he was actually murdered by Tom.
She's come to her senses.
Well,
Not come to her senses. She's like, actually remember what happened. Because he was saying, I could have killed him this way. I could have killed him that way.
Yeah. Well, detectives were in shock as they listened to Candra's story and this completely different version of events. They had believed Tom and Candra's story when they originally came into the station and considered this whole thing to be an unfortunate accident. After hearing Candra's new version of the story, they asked her to sit a polygraph test, which she agreed to, but she actually failed. Although she failed, though, detectives were still intrigued by this new story. I mean, what does she have to gain by admitting like this if it's not true? So detectives look into Tom a little more, and Tom's full name was Thomas Leslie Brown, and he had quite the extensive criminal history that included a number of violent crimes starting from as early as 16. Attempted robbery, car theft, attempted murder, and this was all in the same day. Tom was sent to a reform school, but upon release wasted no time getting back into his destructive ways. For a while, he mostly engaged in petty crimes before escalating to kidnapping a woman and her 2 children he was in a relationship with. The relationship was toxic, and when the woman tried to end it, Tom kidnapped her and her 2 children and took them up to the mountains where they spent the night before letting them go in the morning. The woman was so scared of Tom that she never actually pressed charges.
Whoa.
So basically he's a piece of shit and he's not a good guy and he has this long history of violence, and this warranted detectives to re-look at this case and reconsider that Candra might be telling the truth.
How would they just not do that in the first place anyway? You know, just like really look into, I've accidentally killed someone. Okay. You know, but now.
Yeah. I mean, I guess at first glance it's like a believable story, and like Tom and Candra have no relation to each other. It's not like, I don't know. Maybe it was just a bit of like lazy police work. So the investigators knew that they need more to back up this version of events and to charge Thomas Brown with like the murder of Julio Torres. They suggested that Candra talk to a forensic psychiatrist. Maybe this would be able to shed more light on what happened, because her story's still not clear. She's still unsure of like everything that's happened. Dr. Joseph Cherlevon, who worked at the Oregon State Hospital as head of the psychiatric security unit, spent hours interviewing Candra about the days she spent in the woods. And after hearing her story and pretty much like getting everything out of her, it was very clear to him that Candra was suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. So Stockholm Syndrome can occur when a victim experiences traumatic shock at the hands of their captor, who then isolates them, indoctrinates them, and then promises them a reward. So for Candra, her husband was shot dead, her dog was shot dead, and then she was repeatedly raped. So that is her traumatic shock. She was then isolated and indoctrinated by Tom, which is like basically indoctrinated is when like someone forces you to believe like their set of beliefs kind of thing. So yeah, he repeatedly like tells her his side of the story and his version of the story, and like makes her believe that that's what happened. And then she was isolated when he like walked her into the woods. No one else was around, and then her reward was being released by Tom if she went along with his story. Yeah. So with this information, investigators come to the conclusion that Candra had aligned herself with Tom and his version of events as a way to survive. For Candra, the thought that her husband and dog had been killed just because this man wanted her all to himself was heartbreaking to her. She wanted to believe it was an accident. She also wanted to believe that the man that she was all alone with in the woods, who was holding a rifle and a knife, was not a murderer. She convinced herself that he wasn't, and that it had have been an accident.
That's hectic, hey?
It was the only way she could survive. For her, denial was her survival mechanism. So investigators needed to work out how to prove that Tom murdered Julio. After all, even if Candra's story was true, she didn't actually see Tom shoot Julio, so there's still no way to determine whether or not this was an accident or intentional. And even if she did see him, she had already lied during her original statement, which could potentially be used against her in a trial, and she could be labelled as an unreliable witness. So they needed evidence, concrete evidence, to prove that this was not an accident.
Mm-hmm.
So investigators found a discrepancy in the story that Tom gave versus the one that Candra gave. In Tom's version of events, Rusty had lunged at him and he had shot the dog from front on.
Mm-hmm.
But in Candra's story of events, Rusty had been shot from behind as he was following her as she was running away. But unfortunately, Rusty's body had already been buried and there was no autopsy taken at the time, so there was no way to confirm which way the bullet had entered. But this did give investigators something to look into when it came to Julio's shooting.
They can't dig the dog up?
It was dug in a mass pet grave. So yeah.
Oh, so it wasn't still at where it was. They didn't bury it at the
Crime scene. No.
Okay,
Yeah, it was taken away.
All right.
So when providing an autopsy to Julio, investigators discovered that there was actually no gunpowder located anywhere on Julio's body or face where the bullet had entered, which indicated that he hadn't been shot at a very close range. So they decided to work out the minimum distance that Tom would have had to have been away from Julio to shoot him without leaving any trace of gunpowder on Julio's face or body. And after testing with Tom's rifle, ballistic experts discovered that it wasn't until the rifle was fired at least 36 inches away from its target, which is roughly 91 centimeters, that the target remained free from gunpowder. So this meant that Tom had to have been at least a minimum of 3 feet away from Julio when the rifle went off, and this distance combined with the almost horizontal entry and exit wound meant that Tom's story of an accidental misfire while Julio was passing the gun back to him just didn't hold up. It was like a near impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So after this information and discovery, prosecutors took this evidence to a grand jury to determine whether Julio's death was an accident or actually a murder. In December 1976, almost 5 months after Julio's death, the grand jury came to a decision and Julio had in fact been murdered, and an indictment had been handed down charging Thomas Brown with murder, car theft and forgery. But Thomas was off the grid. Detectives actually had no idea where he was, and so they couldn't arrest him straight away. But to their surprise, a few months after the incident, Thomas shows up at the police station looking calm and collected. He approaches the front desk telling them that he had heard there was a warrant out for his arrest and he just wanted to get it sorted out. So I don't know if he's just stupid or just actually thinks that he's I don't know, it's just smarter than everyone else. Detectives waste no time. They arrest him for murder and he was transferred to county jail to await trial, where he was pleased to discover his new roommate, an old schoolmate that he had spent time with when he went to the reformer school at age 16. He knows this guy.
Small world.
So as we learned earlier on, Tom likes to have a chat. He likes to share things, and he did not hold back with his new cellmate. Mm-hmm. He told him that there was no way he would be charged and that he would be acquitted for sure. He explained to him everything that had happened that weekend in the woods, how he had deliberately shot Julio in the face, claiming that he'd been hired to murder him, and bragged about how he convinced Candra to go along with his story about the accidental shooting and said that she wasn't emotionally strong enough to go through with testifying against him. He said a jury wouldn't find her convincing because she looked older than her actual age, and he told his new roommate, or cellmate, that he passed his polygraph test because he simply chose to believe what he was saying was true. And that when he gets off, he was going to murder the prosecutor, find Candra, and then murder her too. But on the off chance that he was convicted, it would probably only be for 7 years or something. So when he got out, he'd get his revenge then.
Wow.
Yeah. So Tom's little friend from reformer school had absolutely no loyalty to Tom, and he reported everything that Tom had said to the prosecutors. He shared details that only the investigators knew of, and so they knew that he was telling the truth, and Tom had confessed everything. In exchange for a charge removed from his criminal record and being relocated to an out-of-state prison, the former school friend of Tom Brown testified against him in the trial. Tom was given the choice of a jury trial or a trial by judge, and he opted for a trial by judge because, again, he is an idiot. After the trial, and all of the statements and evidence were presented, including an 18-page detailed recount of events written by Candra, it took the judge 3 days to come up with his ruling. He found Thomas Brown guilty and sentenced him to life in prison in the Oregon State Penitentiary. He did apply for parole a number of times over the years, but was never successful. And from what I could find online, Thomas was released from prison last year in August 2023 at the age of 75.
Whoa.
So he served his life sentence.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Crazy.
hectic. It should be life though.
It should be life. But that's like 50 years. As for Candra, she went on to live a happy life, eventually remarrying, having 2 children, and lives in a different state under a new name.
Yeah.
While she lives a relatively low profile life after her incident in 2020, she shared her story with fellow kidnap victim Elizabeth Smart, who was abducted from her home in 2002 at the age of 14 on her new show Finding Justice. Candra and Julio's story was also turned into a true crime book called Empty Promises, which was written by Anne Rule and goes into extensive details about the crime and the investigation that followed. And there is also a movie that was called The Awakening of Candra, but I'm not sure exactly how accurate that is or what that looks like. But yeah, that was the story of Julio and Candra Torres.
Wow.
Crazy.
What a season opener that was.
Was it?
Yep.
It was a bit of a, I feel like I worded that in a way that was like, you might have thought at the start of the story that it was like Julio and Candra that walked into the police station.
Yeah.
But sadly it wasn't. But I think it's crazy that he's out.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was reading something that said that he was due to be released in August 2023 because this was an older news article, and I was like, that was last year. And so I went on this website and looked it up, and it said, yeah, he was released in August 2023 at 75.
Yeah, I wonder if he's still got
He'll be on parole.
Yeah, like he can't leave certain areas like in his town, and he's like got watch on him all the time as well.
I don't know if they necessarily like stalk them, but he'll be on parole, which means he can't leave the state, and you have to be, he has a parole officer.
Yeah.
They have to like know where he has to get a job. I mean, I don't know, he's 75 now, but that's what I learned on Shameless.
Wow. Yeah.
Crazy.
That was a crazy one.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, she's lived a happier life after that, so good for her. And yeah, she tells her story on this episode of Finding Justice, which I tried so hard to find, but it's not available in Australia. It's only available in the US, so I couldn't watch it, but I'm sure that would be a really good one. I always love hearing stories, like survivor stories, like direct from the actual survivor. I just think it's really like insightful and inspiring, because yeah, that would have been a really, it's crazy. It was meant to be like a really lovely romantic weekend celebrating their 1 year anniversary. She was only 16. Like, that's so young.
Yeah.
I mean,
Horrific.
yeah. And then insane. Anyway, I hope you guys not liked it, but I hope you are happy that the podcast is back and you'll be getting your weekly dose of Tell Me Darling again.
Woohoo.
Yay.
Hooray.
We like it. We love it. And we'll see you guys next week.
Tell me then. Is that my line?
I don't remember.
Tell me
Goodbye.
next week.
Bye.
Peace.